Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. Today I have on Weston from The Natural Human Diet. He's on Instagram and YouTube. So I found this guy while chatting with others online about raw meat. If you want to know about my raw meat journey, 2 episodes ago, I just detailed out what's been going on for me. So his Instagram, he's been going for, looks like a bit over a year, where he's been posting pictures of platefuls of like raw meat, raw eggs, oysters, organs. He's also been doing YouTube, I think, for a little over 2 years. But he's been eating all kinds of things, you name it. He's been eating it, and his YouTube features him eating these things while live streaming. So basically this guy, he's been doing a raw meat diet for a lot longer than I have, over 2 years, and I wanted to pick his brain about his experience. Now, to give you fair warning, if you are squeamish, you might find the discussion a bit tough to listen to, in particular between the 10 and 20 minute mark. We talk about brains and some of the other wild things that he's tried. So just fair warning to you, if that makes you a little uncomfortable, you might want to skip it. Otherwise, Wes, he's a pretty solid, down-to-earth guy who I was really happy to meet and, get a chance to chat with. So enjoy the interview. All right, I have Wes here on the podcast. Wes, thanks for joining me, man.
You're welcome, man. It's good to meet you.
So I found you after I got into eating raw meat, and you have a pretty popular Instagram and YouTube, and you eat a variety of interesting things. I think I've only been doing it now for about 3 months, but you've been doing it for a lot longer. I think a couple years, if I'm not mistaken. So how did you get into all of this?
Yeah, so that's a pretty common question I've gotten. And yeah, I've been eating raw meat now for about 2.5 years every day, with just a little bit of intermittent cooked food sprinkled in there. If I go out to lunch with somebody, maybe once every month or two, I'll eat like a cooked steak. But for the most part, I'm like 99.9% raw. And how I got into it was, it's really kind of a long story, but to make it short, it's like I had some, I guess you could say, like skin issues and just some kind of overall general health issues kind of popping up kind of sporadically through my life into my 20s and into my early 30s. Like skin issues and like even like arthritis type stuff, extreme brain fog, mood issues, just, stuff like that. And I always found that diet and eating healthy would greatly impact that either way, positively or negatively. So I've always been kind of focused on trying to eat as healthy as I can. And basically about 2.5 years ago, I just found out about the carnivore diet from basically watching Sean Baker on the Joe Rogan podcast, which I think turned a lot of people onto the carnivore thing. And that really intrigued me. And it was just interesting because I don't think a lot of people had really seen something that extreme, just eating only meat. So it interested me. And so I jumped into the carnivore thing about 2.5 years ago. And I did cooked carnivore for a month. And during that month, I was researching health and nutrition and just diving down every rabbit hole that I could, and eventually stumbled across some videos of raw meat eating. And I found a video with Autogenous Wunderplanets. And so basically, I watched a couple of videos of him where he just offered some really logical and rational explanation for why bacteria and parasites aren't bad for us. And so I just decided to start eating raw steaks the next day, and I just never stopped after that.
So you said you had some health issues, some skin issues and stuff. Was that coming from like a job you had, or do you know why you were getting those issues?
I don't know, man. I actually even had I've had a few seizures in my life too, which is really weird. But and they happened like about 5 years apart each time. And they were drop seizures. So I basically just like fell over. And so that was one of the other things too that had me thinking that I needed to kind of maybe check my diet or something. But yeah, the skin issues I always had, like since I was a teenager. I had like acne, and I don't know if that was from drinking like pasteurized milk or what was going on there, but I was definitely taking in some toxins because after learning all this stuff, I learned that the toxins come out through your skin. So I was taking in something that it wasn't agreeing with my body, and it was just coming out my skin somehow. But it was coming out my scalp too. So I had like really bad, like bumps on my scalp. I remember that would pop up, every once in a while. So it was really annoying.
I know you live in somewhere in the Midwest. Do you live by, I don't know, like fields where they use lots of pesticides or any kind of industrial chemicals or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm in Nebraska. So yeah, we're definitely completely surrounded by cornfields getting sprayed all the time with glyphosate and things like that. So that could be a factor, but I am, in a city. So, and I've always lived in the city. So I'm not necessarily, like right back to back with, cornfields getting sprayed or anything like that. But that's not to say that they couldn't be blowing over from 10, 20, 30 miles away either,
Sure. You might just have more latent exposure than a city in some state that doesn't do that kind of thing. Okay, so you said you tried carnivore before the raw meat thing. So did you ever get into keto? Like, were you kind of transitioning away from carbs into the whole ketogenic movement at all?
Yeah, so I never actually adopted the quote unquote ketogenic thing, but I was aware of like ketosis and stuff like that kind of later on in my diet. But the first thing I did was I actually quit eating bread, and quitting eating bread was like a very significant moment in my life because it completely changed a lot of things that I had been going through, like the brain fog, just kind of my overall energy throughout the day. Bread, for some reason, bread just did not work well with me. So after quitting that's when I started jumping into the carnivore thing. And I think after that, I quit eating like most grains. I quit eating rice, and then I quit eating potatoes, and then I actually quit eating all vegetables. So that was kind of like the order that I went in.
So let's talk about that first time you ate raw meat. Did you have an experience? I mean, was there something that just told you like, man, this is right for me?
Yeah, kind of. It happened a few times, like the first maybe month that I ate raw meat. I remember like one time it just gave me this energy that I had never felt before in my life, like an energy after eating food that I'd never felt. And it felt so good that I like jumped up from the table and just like, it was awesome, man. Like I was so used to eating food and getting almost like tired afterwards, I guess.
Yeah.
But with the raw meat thing, it was like my energy just increased slowly as I started eating, and it never went down for hours. So I just wasn't used to that. And so it was just like a great feeling, man.
Yeah, I can really relate. In the first month and a half, it was almost euphoric. I mean, it's less so now, but when I would eat raw meat, it was like about an hour afterwards, man, just this euphoria would kick in, and it was just like, man, I can handle anything in life, I can do whatever I want. And I don't know if it's the raw meat or the relief from my old diet or whatever, but it was just, it was so palpable, that feeling of energy.
Yep. Yeah, I had that exact same experience, and it was like I had stumbled across some really awesome, like deep secret about life. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, almost something that was hidden in plain sight that everyone just goes, oh no, that couldn't be anything good, but in reality, It was like like treasure. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So you mentioned Agenus Vonderplanets. He seems a little nuts when you listen to a lot of his stuff, but you were saying that it really made sense to you, and you mentioned a little bit of the parasite and the bacteria stuff. Maybe kind of go into that a little bit more about Agenus and what made his message stand out to you.
Oh yeah. So yeah, Agenus is a very interesting guy, man. Like, very rare individual, extremely just brilliant guy. Almost, I guess you could say he's probably almost like an autistic savant, because he actually was autistic. He said he didn't speak until he was like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 or something like that. Like he didn't even talk for a while.
Yeah.
He was an autistic kid. And so obviously, I mean, he had that going for him. And then he healed a bunch of his own diseases, according to his own account through diet, and then came across this primal diet thing, which basically made him, known to most of the world. But yeah, he's definitely like a very eccentric dude, and a lot of people have a hard time believing some of the stories that he has told, because his life, I believe them personally, because the reason is because I've never detected any form of deception with him. And I think that humans have like an ability to detect whether someone's lying or being deceptive. And I've never felt that with him at all, with anything he's ever said. In fact, like autistic people almost have, they're almost forced to brutally tell the truth all the time, to a fault almost.
Yeah.
Like I think that if anything, he's just brutally being honest with people. But yeah, he's got some pretty wild stories, man. Like encountering Native Americans and encountering like wolves and stuff like that brought him raw meats and things like that. So a lot of people have a hard time believing that stuff. But yeah, he's an eccentric guy, and I just really identified with the scientific side of him, because I've always been like a pretty heavily science-based, like I was always doing good at that in school, and I've always been interested in it. So he breaks everything down on a very scientific level. He's basically a scientist that did his own experiments on raw meats and animals and rotten meats with parasites and bacteria and chemicals. Like, he's done all those experiments himself. And so the way that he breaks things down logically just really resonated with the way that I think personally. So it just all just clicked.
Yeah. So you mentioned rotten meat. Have you ever tried his fermented meat?
Yep. Yeah, I've tried fermented liver, fermented beef tongue, and I don't know if I've fermented anything else, but I really like the fermented liver, which sounds crazy and it looks absolutely disgusting, but it's actually really good, man. Like, it's almost like a sharp cheese with like maybe like some kind of like beef sauce on it or something like that. It's very much an acquired taste, and the more you eat it, the more you start to crave it.
Wow. Is it, did it make you feel any different than regular raw meat or anything like that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like, basically the idea behind the fermentation process is it's supposed to increase the K2 levels in the liver. I've heard that before. So you're getting like a big vitamin K blast when you eat it. But basically what you're doing is you're letting the natural bacteria on the meat, pre-digest it for you in the jar. And so once you go to eat it, like a month or two later, I got some in my cupboard that's about 6 months old right now. And once you get to it, it's basically all pre-digested. So you get all of that nutrition and vitamins instantly into your system. And so that's why they call it high meat, is because it can actually make you feel high and euphoric. And I definitely get that feeling off of it. And it also gives me good energy, like a nice physical energy. So I want to go out and like walk or run or something like that afterwards.
Oh, that's wild, man. That's wild. I mean, you can imagine people listening to this probably are like a little grossed out, a little fascinated. I mean, it's gotta be, I don't know how to say it, but socially, I mean, do you have a problem socially with this? I mean, is it just kind of weird? Do you not tell people?
That's a good question, man. Yeah, I've heard someone phrase it like social suicide. It's basically eating raw meats. Yeah, it can interfere with certain social things, obviously, like going out to eat with people, going out to restaurants. Like, I usually break down and just eat like a cooked steak or something like that, which I still enjoy. I love like a nice marinated raw ribeye steak. Ribeye steak. That's very tasty. But yeah, socially, I'm sure it's no surprise, but I've always been, I guess, somewhat of a weird guy. Like, just different, I guess unique, you could say, but free thinker. And so I've always kind of done my own thing and never really followed the crowd per se. But so when this happened and I started eating raw meat and things like that, let's just say like my mom and my close friends weren't very like surprised. It wasn't like very astonishing to them that I started eating raw meat or anything. But definitely I've gotten a lot of like, yeah, that's gross. Or, you know, when my friends come over and I have like raw brains sitting out for dinner, they think it's pretty weird. But I'm like, you don't even know what you're missing out on, man. You know, I smile and just, you know, because I realize that most people are, basically that used to be me. So I don't judge other people for what they eat anymore. And I just kind of expect it from them, you know?
Yeah. So it sounds like you've tried a lot of different kinds of raw meat, different organs and stuff. What's your favorite type? I mean, is there a difference between them all?
Well, I guess probably, let's see. I would say my favorite raw food of all time is probably raw oysters. Love raw oysters. But as far as like the weird stuff, unconventional like organs, I eat a lot of glands too. I eat a lot of raw testicles. And so wasn't actually like that strange because a lot of people actually cook testicles and eat them. It's fairly common, but eating them raw is probably one of my favorite things to do because it's actually like a pretty intense testosterone boost. So it's like a natural way for men to get testosterone is eating raw testicles. And it's something that I've never actually heard anybody say before. And it's something that I actually just stumbled upon myself. And so I'm trying to get the word out to people that, hey, you know, if you're having testosterone problems, you can get these in a natural way. But problem is it's not easy for people to source these types of things. But I'm lucky enough to have like a live meat market that's like a couple miles from my house. And I'm good friends with the owner of it. And so I can go down there and buy all this weird stuff that you would have to pay, you know, big bucks for online or whatever. But yeah, I really enjoy raw testicles, which is essentially a gland. So it's not technically an organ. Raw brains are really good. Raw brains are very interesting because they actually give me very vivid, intense dreams after I eat them at night. So that's like something that has like been really intriguing to me ever since I started eating those. And I'm not the only one that experiences that. I know many people that eat raw brains and they have these intense, like lucid dreams. So there's definitely something to that. There's definitely something inside raw brains, obviously, that you're not getting from other parts of the animal. I mean, there's like human growth hormone in there. There's a lot of vitamin C in raw brains. There's a lot of omega-3s in there. So they're actually really healthy for you.
So you mentioned you stumbled upon the testicles. Maybe you could kind of spell that out. How did you figure out that raw testicles was the way?
Well, let's see. I really I learned a lot of this stuff, man, from just like staying open and open-minded. And I listen to a lot of people on the internet and I listen to my friends and I take everybody's suggestions seriously. And I run with them, you know, when it makes sense. And so that's how I've learned a lot of this stuff is just taking suggestions from people. And my buddy just said, hey, man, you should see if the guy at the live market has raw testicles available. And I was like, that's such a great idea, man. So I went down there and sure enough, he had bags of them because nobody eats them. Nobody buys them, which is mind blowing. Like, you know, I live in the city I'm in here has got probably 500,000 people in the city. And there's another 500,000 that live in the outside of it. So we're in about 1 million people total here. And I'm literally one of the only people that goes down there and buys brains and testicles. So, and they're considered like brains are considered like a delicacy in a lot of parts of the world. So it's just amazing, man, that like out of all these people here, I'm one of the only people that buys them. But I just started eating the testicles one day and I just noticed that I had a little, I guess, boost in my libido and then also a boost in just my mood, you know, because testosterone can make your mood go up definitely if it's at the right level. So it just made me feel great, man. And so I did an experiment and I ate only testicles all day, every day for 3 days. And it was mind blowing, like how much it increased my testosterone.
Really? Did you get better muscle pumps at the gym or anything like that?
Yeah, like I don't know if I was lifting as much at the time, but it was like an intense libido boost. That was like the number one thing I noticed. And then also my energy, mood, and my focus was up. So I'm pretty in tune with my body, so I know when my testosterone is like fluctuating up and down slightly, because I do a lot of weightlifting in cycles. And so when I do a lot of weightlifting, I can tell my testosterone's up. I know what it feels like,
Yeah.
And so it definitely just mimicked that basically.
What do they taste like?
They don't really have much of a taste. A little bit sweet, I guess. I really have a hard time describing some of these foods because they're so unique. Like there's nothing to compare them to really, but they don't really, raw foods don't really taste like much, but it's kind of sweet, I guess. And it's got like the consistency of like a raw scallop.
Okay. Well, that's pretty nuts, man. I mean, it's kind of crazy. I think I heard of one other guy who was eating raw testicles before I found you, and he made the comment like, yeah, they're kind of salty. And I was just like watching this. I'm like, dude, you know why they're salty, man. Like, you know what you're eating right there, bro. Like, come on.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, that's right.
So, let's talk about, health effects. Have you ever had any kind of digestion problems from the meat?
Oh, from raw meat? No, never.
Okay. Have you ever gotten sick? Have you ever, had any kind of bad meat that went south on you?
No, I sure haven't, man.
So you probably don't think that the whole infection, the whole food poisoning thing, that really just doesn't even factor in.
No, it doesn't, man. Like I've eaten, up to this date, I've eaten over 2,000 pounds of raw meat and I've never gotten sick. And so the whole thing about food poisoning is that it actually comes from cooking your food. So basically you have a balance of natural bacteria that's on the meat. And basically when you cook it, what it does is it mutates the bad bacteria and it destroys the good bacteria. So you run into food poisoning issues when you like eat a partially cooked piece of meat, because of basically that you're destroying the biome balance. And basically if you just would have let it sit raw with the natural bacteria on it, whether it's got salmonella or whatever is naturally found on meat, the good bacteria when you eat it would naturally balance everything out and you wouldn't get sick off of it. So yeah, it happens from cooking.
Okay. Do you think part of that is the sourcing? Have you eaten meat that is sourced from very far away and, had any problem there?
Yeah, I actually do source my meat very well. I get it from 100% grass finished farmers. They don't use any vaccines on their animals. And they're just all raised on grass. So that's where I get my beef, and my chicken is all pasture raised as well. And so that's a big part of it, but I don't know if that necessarily is going to give you like food poisoning per se, because like there's a lot of factors that go into it, like you can run into problems when you're eating like vaccinated bone marrow, because vaccines store in your fat. And so you can run into issues eating marrow because the marrow is going to hold those chemicals and toxins. And so, but you're not going to get like a typical food poisoning symptom from that. That's probably just going to store in your body and you're going to detox that at a later date. But yeah, I think sourcing is like a big part of it. And yeah, I just try to stay away from like factory farm stuff. I don't really shop at the grocery store anymore. I actually meet all my farmers in like parking lots. It's almost like it's like doing a drug deal, trying to get good food nowadays. You got to meet them in a parking lot, and they they give me my stuff there or whatever, or I order like a quarter cow or a half of a cow, and then I go pick it up straight from the processing facility, and then I get it all cut exactly how I want it cut, and then I pick it up fresh, and that way I get all the bones, I get all the organs, I get all the meat that way. So that's definitely a big part of it, man. Yeah.
How do you store, if you order half a cow, how do you store that?
So I usually only get a quarter cow, so it's a little bit easier to manage. Last time I got a half a cow, I actually worked out a deal with them to where I could get a quarter cow at one date, and then I got the rest of another quarter cow like a month later. But basically with a quarter cow, at least a grass-fed cow that I'm getting, it came out to about, after everything's said and done, about 90 pounds to 100 pounds of meat. And so what I would do is like just put half of that in the fridge and then just throw the other half in the freezer. And then I would eat just nothing but beef every day for like a month.
Do you notice a difference between meat that's never been frozen and meat that you freeze and then thaw out?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, definitely. There's a little better energy that I get off of the fresh meat. And so I do prefer fresh over frozen, which is why I try to get as many of those quarter or half cow beef bundles as I can, because it's one of the only ways, at least around here, that I can get fresh grass finished beef. Other than that, most of it's frozen,
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask about the sourcing is I wonder if this diet is only really possible with local sourcing. I had an experience where I ran out of meat or something, so I just went to Sprouts and I bought some lamb that had been shipped over from New Zealand, and it looked great. It was like in this little plastic crate thingy, and it was plastic wrapped over the top, and it looked very red, so I'm sure they pumped carbon monoxide in there or whatever to prevent it from turning brown. And as soon as I opened it, it was like this smell of rotten eggs. I mean, it was so gnarly. And it literally, I was like, okay, maybe I'll be able to do it. And I pulled it out, and it was like, I would gag just smelling it. And it was like, wow, okay, this obviously is not, not going to be something I'm going to be able to eat. And so I don't know. What do you think of that? I mean, could you do this on super, a grocery store food?
Well, that's interesting about your experience there, because, that's basically like God gave us these senses of smell and sight to look at our food to be able to tell whether it's edible or not. And so that's like your most basic like metric or measuring test for seeing if the food should be eaten is just smell it and look at it. That's what I tell a lot of people. So that applies to eating stuff from the grocery store too. You just look at it and smell it. And if it smells okay and if it looks okay, then 99.9% of the time it's going to be fine for you,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you run into issues with meat when you throw in those packages like that, because what you're doing is you're blocking off all the oxygen from the meat, and so you're turning some of that bacteria anaerobic. And so that's probably what happened with that meat, is some of the bacteria turned anaerobic,
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely pretty gnarly, and I definitely agree with you about your what it looks like and what it smells like. The thing about vision, at least, is they have figured out ways to make things look really nice, even if it's not. Mm-hmm. But your nose, I think your nose is harder to trick.
Yeah, I agree, man.
Yeah. So I also wanted to ask you about the people who follow you. Have you had a lot of your followers kind of go over to raw meat?
Yeah, man. It's been a real blessing to have this YouTube channel. It's been an interesting ride, man. Like, I've just met so many people all around the world. I've learned so much about just nutrition and health and life in general. And I've made a lot of really close friends too. I got some friends in Germany and all over, man, that I talk to all the time now. And I get interesting perspectives about things from that part of the world. But I've had the opportunity to help a lot of people, man. I've done personal consultations like on Skype with people that wanted to just get a one-on-one with me and get personal, and just I'm willing to answer anything. And then through email, I answer all my emails, and I've done that for the last 2.5 years. Like, I try to get back to everybody. I answer all of my direct messages on Instagram. And honestly, man, I'm not really in this to become like a huge like YouTuber or Instagram or social media guy. Like, I really just want to help people because this diet has helped me so much. And I know it's extremely weird and eccentric, and I understand like how different it looks to people, but I'm just kind of trying to do my best to normalize it as much as I can, you know?
Yeah. So when you say that people are contacting you and for consultations and stuff, is it that they're trying this diet and they're having issues with it, or what's going on?
Yeah, there's that, and there's just so many questions people have. They don't know where to source good foods. A lot of people they're just like, I don't know how to explain it, like just wrecked, man. Like, a lot of people with all these vaccines we're getting nowadays, kids are getting nowadays, and all of the chemicals and junk in our food and medication and water and just pollution everywhere. Like, everybody's just messed up, man. Like, really messed up with bad health problems. And so a lot of people that go through these consultations with me, man, they're just destroyed, and they want to know how to get themselves back together again, like the quickest way possible. And raw meat is definitely the way to do that,
So what kind of problems do they have with the raw meat diet itself? I mean, digestion, sleep, or anything like that?
There's a lot of things that pop up with people. Like, dairy is a big one. Like, a lot of people say that they can't tolerate dairy. So that's like a big mystery nowadays, why people can't tolerate dairy, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I've thought about this stuff for a long time, and I think that what's going on is just that everybody's just different, Like, you can say that we're one species and we should have one diet, but everybody's not born the same. Everybody doesn't have the same set of genetics. Everybody's like damaged to a DNA level on a different scale. And so, like, it all depends on like what your health today all depends on basically like what your mom ate when she was pregnant with you. Were you breastfed? What your mom ate when she was growing up. Like, this stuff goes all the way back generational. And so it's like really hard to do like a double-blind, placebo-controlled nutrition study on like a population of people, because you would have to know all of those confounding variables, and there's like infinite variables with people. So when trying to figure stuff out, like, why can't I tolerate dairy, et cetera, it's like, I just think what happens is people, they either inherit damaged DNA from their parents, and so they just basically come out into this world damaged, or it happens somehow through vaccines, chemicals, drugs, pollution in our food. And basically people get to the point to where they can't even drink like a glass of milk, So yeah, that's part of it.
When you say damaged DNA, what do you mean?
Well, I think that, basically like all disease comes from environmental toxins. And so, disease is not made by nature. It's not made by God. It's made by man, essentially. So it comes through toxins in our air, water, food, and medication. And what happens is it enters your body and then it goes into your cell. And essentially what happens is if it's not detoxified or eradicated through a natural bacterial detox or a viral detox, then it can actually damage the DNA of your cell. And I think that stuff can be passed down to your children, and so your children can inherit damaged DNA if the parent lived a toxic lifestyle, or they were taking in toxins when they were pregnant with you. There's a lot of different ways it can come in.
Yeah, you said you said virus detox or bacteria detox. What is that?
Yeah, so yeah, viruses. Well, we're just starting to learn now that at least one of the latest theories that I've picked up on through Dr. Thomas Cowan, who's a great resource on disease. I highly recommend everybody check him out. But basically, viruses are like exosomes, and they're just like DNA protrusions from the cell. And so they don't come from the environment. They don't come externally. They actually come from inside the body. And so they are triggered when some kind of pollutant or toxin from the environment enters your body and goes into the cell. And your body doesn't have enough bacteria to remove it, or whatever toxin is in there, it's actually too strong for bacteria. Like, let's say it's like a chemical and it would kill the bacteria in your body. Then what your body does is it manufactures these exosomes. And what they do is they bind onto the toxin and remove it. It's like a solvent, and it removes it from your body. So that's basically what like a flu is.
That's really interesting. I think most people hearing that would have not even heard anything about that somehow like a flu or a virus or a bacteria is actually like detoxing you. That sounds like kind of wild. That's totally opposite of what we'd normally hear.
Oh man, it's completely radical, man. It's a totally radical concept compared to what we've all been taught. But it's actually been around for a long time, man. It's called terrain theory, and the modern medical institution today adopted germ theory, and so they blame everything on germs. But actually, the competing theory to that is called terrain theory, and that's what we're talking about. And yeah, if you don't believe me, check out Dr. Thomas Cowan, Cowan. That guy, he's actually a medical doctor. He's a genius, and he explains things in like a super simple way. But he's basically he's one of the people today that's on the forefront of bringing this out right now.
So would terrain theory then say that when you get the flu or whatnot, that's actually a good thing, that you're getting rid of toxins or whatever? Yeah,
basically, your body's just rapidly removing whatever's in there.
It's interesting. I don't think I've had the flu or been sick for years. So is that not good?
I've heard, I mean, I guess you could look at that both ways. Maybe you're just not taking in any toxins and you're fine. But yeah, I've heard people say that too. They're like, oh man, you haven't had the flu in a long time. But I haven't been sick. I haven't been sick this entire year one time.
You mean since the beginning 10 days ago, or you mean 2020?
No, I mean, well, yeah, so I haven't been sick in over a year. I had a couple really, really bad detoxes when I first got into this diet and got like, bad flu with the shakes and the sweating and just, it was bad. But I haven't been sick since, so I think my body just got rid of all that stuff.
Yeah, that might be something good to talk about. Some people who go on this raw meat diet, they get sick, they get fevers and stuff. Do you know what's going on there?
Yeah, you're basically just detoxing all of that cooked food and crap and chemicals and drugs and everything you've been taking in for 20, 30 years, depending on how old you are. You've been when you started the diet. But yeah, you're basically, when you're taking in the raw foods, what happens when you take in raw food is it actually replaces the cooked food in your body. Because when you eat cooked food, your body tries to assimilate those proteins and fat molecules and build your body up or repair your body with that stuff. But when you take in the raw stuff, it actually replaces the cooked stuff because it's just a better way to build your body up. And so you're going to actually detox all that cooked food out of your body for, a while. But also you're going to remove all of the toxins and chemicals and just all that crap that comes from the world out of your body at the same time.
That sounds, it sounds a little far-fetched, that you'd have like cooked food in your body that your body's going to replace. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but it sounds so out there, I'm trying to.
Well, yeah. Well, here's a better way to explain it, like that people might understand. Like, so a cooked fat molecule is actually 50 times larger than a raw fat molecule. And so when you ingest that into your body doesn't know how to make that cooked fat molecule go back to a regular fat molecule. Like, the damage has already been done. And that's what heat does, is it just damages everything it touches. And so your body assimilates that fat molecule that's 50 times larger than a raw fat molecule into your body. And that makes you actually look bigger than you normally would. And so that's why people on cooked food diets if they're overweight, they look so fat. It's because they're eating cooked fat. So you can actually get on a raw fat diet or a raw primal diet, and you can actually have the same body fat percentage as somebody on a cooked food diet and look significantly smaller than them because the actual molecules of the fat are smaller.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk about how somebody like would get into this if they wanted to try this. Like, what would be your like 101 advice? Like, okay, you want to try this. Here's how you source it. Here's how you start it. Here's what to expect. What would that be?
Okay, yeah. So, two good sources to check out would be eatwild.com. So eatwild.com is it's a big database full of like local farmers and local ranchers. And so you can find really good food that way, good grass-fed meat and stuff like that, eggs, all sorts of different types of animals. And then as far as dairy goes, a good one to check out is realmilk.com. And realmilk.com is another database that is going to link up all of the raw dairy farmers in your area. If it's legal in your state to actually sell directly off the farm, it'll be on that site. So, but the laws are different from state to state. You got some states where it's legal to sell directly off the farm, and then you got some states that they have like a herd share law where you can like buy part of the herd technically, and then you just go there and you buy your milk that comes from your cow. And then there's other states that don't allow it at all, and then there's other states that you can just buy it in the store. But if you can't buy it in the store, go to realmilk.com. So that would be like the two best places to check out to find your local grass-fed ranchers to get some good food. If you can't do that, then just you can eat supermarket food. I would suggest starting out with something like fatty, like a chuck roast or something like that. If you can afford ribeyes are great, but they're just really expensive. But make sure you get enough fat in. That's like the biggest thing that people have an issue with. Their energy's down. They don't have enough energy to do stuff when they're on the raw diet or carnivore-based diet. You got to make sure you eat enough fat. So you got to be eating fatty cuts. If you can't get a good fatty cut of meat, then supplement raw butter with it. And that's actually what I do is I try to eat fatty cuts, and then I also eat a big chunk of raw butter with every meal. And so I'm just constantly intaking fat, and so I'm never low on that. So it's a couple things to think about. But yeah, you can basically just dive right in, and it's the food is more palatable if you leave it on the counter for like a few hours before you eat it to get it up to like room temperature. And if you have a hard time with the flavor right off the bat, which I did, I mean, it was weird. I didn't have a hard time with it, but like stuff like raw liver was like kind of hard to do at first, and raw eggs. So I would wash it down with raw milk or water. But I found that I digest my food way better without drinking any liquids with it. So that may be something that you run into with that. But if you have to force yourself to eat it, which I actually did, because you're basically transitioning over from the standard diet, sugar diet, over to raw meat. So your whole microbiome in your body has to like shift over and adapt, and you're not going to be used to the taste or anything for a while. So, you can wash it down with milk, dip it in honey if you need to. Honey is always a good digestive supplement.
Okay, and what about time of day? I mean, is it better to eat it in the morning? Is it better to do one meal a day versus multiple meals?
Yeah, so everybody's going to be different with that. Obviously, like there's smaller people, bigger people. I'm a bigger person. I'm about 6'3". I move around 200 pounds. And so I've had to eat quite a bit of food just to keep my energies up. And at the beginning, I was eating like 3 meals a day. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then I moved to 2 meals a day. And 2 meals seems to be my sweet spot. So especially if I'm like active or I have to work that day or whatever, like right at lunchtime, I'll eat something, and then right at dinner. So I'll eat like a pound of meat each meal. But some days, like lately, like on my days off, I just eat 1 meal a day. So it kind of depends on like what you're doing that day. And also I quit lifting weights for the past like month and a half, which I do periodically. I don't know why. It's just I kind of follow my urges on that. And so when I quit lifting, I need like significantly less food. And so I can get away with eating basically one big meal in the middle of the day, like 2 or 3 p.m. And then at night, I'll eat like a big old chunk of raw cheese or something like that before I go to bed. And then I'm good.
And okay. And so should people expect to get some kind of sickness when they first start this, or is that rare?
Yeah. You're probably going to detox. Like you're going to start detoxing and you're going to start getting better. It's going to make you healthier. But in the process of that, you got to remove all the bad stuff out of your body first. So yeah, in my experience, I had at least 2 that I can remember, pretty bad like flus or colds. One of them was definitely a flu. It was definitely viral. And the other one was probably a cold. But I've had at least 2 in a year. And then after my first year of just eating nothing but raw foods every day, I haven't been sick since. Like, I haven't even been close to getting a cold or a flu or anything like that.
And how long does that period of adaptation, how long does that usually last?
Well, that's a good question, because I didn't really pay attention too close to my detox symptoms and when they started and when they ended and things like that. But I can say that I started around, let's see, probably the 2-year mark is when I started feeling like I was completely healed. Like, I felt like I had just been through everything, I guess would be the way to say it. Because it's so radically transformational going through like a raw diet that you basically turn into a completely different person. So it's kind of hard to go back and measure like what happened when and how long it lasted and stuff. But like, I definitely felt like around 2-year mark was when I felt like I was like a completely different person and all of my health problems like went away entirely.
When you say completely different person, what are you referring to?
Well, just mentally, physically, spiritually, everything, man. Like, I just had just a radical transformation. Like, I actually felt like, and I've had other people say the same thing. I actually felt like I almost went through like a second puberty, or it actually completed my puberty from my teens. And so I basically felt like, I don't know. I feel like I'm a man now. I feel like I'm completely a man. Like, I'm completely rational, logically minded. I'm not like as emotional as I was when I was on the standard American diet. And yeah, just my mood and my energy is completely stabilized. And I feel like I have more of an idea of, like, I'm looking at kind of like the bigger picture now. Like, I can see into my future more. And it's just, my whole view of life and the world has completely changed. And so I think a lot of that has to do with the diet. Like, I haven't really changed anything else. So, but
yeah, I actually really can relate to that. I started eating raw meat, and it was like kind of like you get this grounding, this thing that just says, you can handle life, things are good, and it does expand your vision outward so that you're not so, staring at your feet. You're not like, okay, you're going from this to that and trying to keep things going and doing this rat race, and all of a sudden you're just like mature. You're like you look far. Yeah. So I can hear what you're saying there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm pretty much out of questions. I usually ask my guests what they think the worst you're probably going to have a lot of excuse me. You're probably going to have a lot of answers to this, but what do they think the worst advice is that they hear in the mainstream for people?
Oh, wow. As far as like health and nutrition?
Correct. Yeah.
I would say the worst thing that you could ever tell somebody is to go on a low-fat diet.
Interesting.
Because a low-fat, low-cholesterol diet, I think that's the worst thing you could tell someone, man, because your fat is there to insulate you from the toxins in your environment. So like when toxins enter your body, they get stored in your fat. When you're a very lean person with no fat in your body, those toxins are going to go straight into your body and could potentially damage your organs and things like that. And also your brain is completely made of cholesterol. So this whole like low cholesterol thing is just, it's mind blowing to me, because after learning all this stuff about health, it's like, how could you tell someone to cut down their cholesterol when your brain is made of it,
Yeah. So you're probably not a big fan of going to doctors and that kind of thing.
No, not really.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. It's kind of once you understand that the recipe book that they're going by can marginally help some cases, but can potentially really hurt you. It's like, well, I guess I'm on my own a little bit, huh?
Yep. Yeah, completely. Yeah.
All right, man. Anything else you want to throw in there? Anything we didn't cover?
No. I mean, if people want to check out more on this stuff, obviously my YouTube channel, The Natural Human Diet, and then my Instagram is also called The Natural Human Diet. So I post pictures on there every day, and I'll be back to live streaming on YouTube here probably in a couple months or so. I'm just taking a little break.
Yeah, you do have some great live streams. Are you planning on ever, I don't know, writing a book or doing anything like that?
Yeah, maybe eventually, man. I definitely want to get to the point to where I feel like I have a good grip on what I'm talking about and what I've learned, but it's just, I'm still learning stuff every day, man. It's amazing. So I want to wait until I accumulate it all, and then I can get it all down. And I don't want to jump the gun and act like I'm some sort of expert yet,
Yeah, I hear you. All right, brother. Well, thanks so much for coming on.
All right. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, that was Weston. He gave some great resources there at the end, eatwild.com and realmilk.com. I'll have those along with his channel in the show notes. I really like talking to him. He seems just like a really chill guy who, he'd be fun to shoot the shit with and hang out with. Some of his ideas were definitely a little bit out there, with agenus, as well as fat molecules being bigger or smaller, depending on whether they're cooked or not. But, at this point, after all the research I've done on all these different subjects and all the people I've interviewed, my attitude and my belief system have moved just more and more towards the empirical side of things. Even more so than, when I first started the podcast. When I hear outlandish things, if they're pointing to something that is observable, I just go along with what is observable. Often something works, and the explanation of why that thing works is totally illogical, doesn't make sense, but it just works. Kind of reminds me of that old joke where they say, how does it go? Pure theory is when everything makes sense to everybody, but nothing works. Pure practice is when everything works, but nobody knows why. And when you combine theory and practice, you get nothing that works and nobody knows why. So I guess I'd much rather live in a world where everything works and nobody knows why. So after this interview, I decided to see if I could find some cow testicles and brains to give them a shot. And I thought, I could just give them a try and I'd be able to tell you in this conclusion, what they were like. Well, it turns out it's a lot harder to find those, unique organs or whatnot than I thought it would be. Apparently, it is illegal to sell cow testicles or brains. So all the farmers that I asked were super quick to say, we're not allowed to give away or sell any part of the animal, prohibited by the Department of Agriculture. So I kind of hit a wall there in trying to find local stuff. There are some online sources, I could get, which would be, shipped to you frozen and whatnot, but I was just really hoping to find something that was around me. Anyways, I'll keep you updated on that stuff. Hope you enjoyed the interview. If you did, help me out. Share it with one other person or more. You can share it with more, but at least one other person. That would be really great, just to get the word out about this content. I hope your January started off well for 2021, and I will talk to you soon. Be well.